The winners of the White House turkey pardon were chosen through a highly competitive online vote. And once again, Nate Silver completely nailed it. The guy's amazing.
President Obama with a little shout out there for Nate Silver, brand new to ESPN and ABC News, also the editor-in-chief of 538.com. Welcome to ABC. Great to have you here, Nate.
Of course. Good morning.
And you did nail the 2012 election. So we want to talk about this year's elections and then how we see things playing out going into next year. Starting with something that John Carl mentioned in this first roundtable, we've seen two big storylines this fall. The government shutdown clobbers Republicans the beginning of the fall. President Obama, Democrats getting clobbered by health care the last several weeks. How do you see this playing out as we head towards the midterms next year?
Well, these are maybe the two biggest lines that each side has. The thing about the Obamacare rollout problems is it plays in this whole notion that Senator Paul was talking about, where how competent is big government? Is there overreach here? The execution issues. On the other hand, Democrats can say, almost running an anti-incumbent campaign, saying the GOP is so dangerous when they get power, we need to disempower them.
And we're already seeing that in ads right now.
You are, and these are stories. You know, I do kind of use the Jon Stewart test, is that because more Americans are watching comedic shows and are watching Leno and Letterman and Jon Stewart, and when things become a punchline there and resonate with people outside the Beltway, that's when the issues might resonate forward to next year.
Two key numbers you're also looking at as we head into next year, then I want to broaden out the conversation. Number one, congressional approval right now down to 12%, 85 disapprove of Congress. And then when you look at the 2014 elections, generic ballot, we call it Democrats versus Republicans. Democrats have about an 8-point lead, but that doesn't tell the whole story.
Yeah, there are a couple issues with these numbers. Number one is that these were numbers right after the shutdown. There's been in another poll, the NBC poll, we've seen Democrats retreating from their peak in that poll. But also these are numbers among registered voters and not likely voters. Usually there's a turnout gap that favors the GOP in midterm elections. Plus, we have to remember, too, that the way congressional districts are configured, most of them are somewhat Republican-leaning. Democrats are concentrated in big cities. That means Mitt Romney actually won the majority of districts last year. So although those numbers look good for Democrats superficially, very challenging for them to win back the House.
And, you know, on that point, if you look at where those numbers were before the Republican wave in 2010, Democrats had an advantage on the generic ballot in Congress. Even in 1994 with the Gingrich revolution, I mean, you had Democrats had that advantage. So it wasn't quite as big as it is now, but it wasn't much different.
And the great thing about Nate, which is something I referred to, is it's data-driven as opposed to sort of like, here's an anecdote. Wow, there's a big rally going on in Richmond, Virginia. It's going to change the nature of this. The other conflicting data point that I think we have looking at is the president's approval number. Because when you look at the president's approval number, you usually say, just singularly looking at that, oh, it's going to be bad for the Democrats. But then you look at the Republicans' approval number, it's really bad for the Republicans. And so I think 2014 is not going to be a wave election, in my view. It's going to be a fought-out battle by battle by battle by battle, and redistricting is going to affect that.
And two big battles coming up right now, 2013. On Tuesday, we see governor's races in both Virginia and New Jersey. So for a little bit of a surprise in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, Democrat, grew up in New York, seems to be heading towards a victory over Ken Cuccinelli, a Tea Party favorite. Both Barack Obama and Bill Clinton will be campaigning for him today. In New Jersey, Chris Christie seems to be coasting to re-election in a big blue state, despite those revelations in Double Down, and he's making no secret that he's at least looking at a presidential run. Peggy Noonan, you spent some time with Governor Christie this week.
Yeah, he was beginning his big 7-day bus tour of New Jersey, right, to end on Election Day. I found him to be an example of the lost joy, the lost pleasure of politics. He's out there having fun. They love him. He's going to win by, we don't know, 20, 25, whatever points. He is feeling triumphant. That is a rare thing to see in a Republican these days. So it was wonderful to witness him. Let me tell you something I've been thinking about, though, with regard to New Jersey and Virginia. New Jersey is about to, we believe, it looks like, re-elect a red state figure who is pro-life, and he's about to win by a lot of points, it appears from the polls. Ken Cuccinelli, down south in Virginia, if that's still called the South, is a pro-life guy who is expected, according to the polls, to go down. So he's going to go down in a mixed state, and Christie is going to win in a deep blue state. I'm trying to make my point here. It's that, wow, pro-life politics and social issues can be very interesting.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that Chris Christie should really enjoy this moment. When you read Double Down and you see the kinds of stuff that has not come out about him yet, and when you actually talk to people who live in New Jersey about property taxes going up, the bond rating going down, poverty growing, I think the myth of Chris Christie is going to pop like a big balloon. I think this is his last great moment. I think when you want to run as a fiscally conservative guy and your property taxes are going up and you got the worst bond rating in the state and the stuff that's in that book,
let's separate those questions. I've read the parts of the book about Chris Christie. What are you specifically referring to? I mean, I saw the stuff on his vetting file. You know, it's stuff that could be uncomfortable. It has to be answered, but it doesn't seem to be disqualifying.
I just have been out there.
Listen, the stuff that I've seen, I haven't read the full book. The stuff that I've seen, when you talk about the kind of temper, when you can put together a roll of tape, you have to have a DVD full of the greatest hits of this guy yelling at people and screaming at people. I don't think it's been packaged together yet, but more importantly,
that's his brand.
Listen. If that's such a great brand, then why wasn't he the vice president?
George, here's what I think. Wednesday morning.
I think it's the last great moment.
Next Wednesday morning, we're going to be reflecting on. We'll be reflecting on Virginia and New Jersey. What I think they signify more than anything else is not some sort of thing that's going to tell us 2014. Virginia and New Jersey never tell you about what the future is. If you look back at the elections, what they do say is the environment in the state or the geography matters, and both of the environments have helped.
And ideology matters.
And competence of candidates matter.
So Chris Christie is a conservative on some issues like abortion, but other issues that are important to suburban voters in New Jersey, so immigration, the environment, gun control, he takes a more moderate stand. So I think it's kind of a fairly simple story where in a purple state, a Tea Party candidate is going to be a disadvantage, even if it's a very mediocre Democratic nominee.
And Hurricane Sandy. His ability, what he did, well, obviously we're now having a New York Marathon today, which we didn't have last year, because how he handled Hurricane Sandy basically determined his election.
Can I tell you, Christie said, I asked him about these issues. He said, you know what you guys all misunderstand about politics? It's not about ticking off boxes and this issue and that issue. He said at the end, it's personal. It's a personal, visceral judgment about your leader. He said politics is personal. We'll see, but it was an interesting little analysis of what a leader is.
He's going to have to do that.
Meanwhile, John Carl,
true.
Talk about Virginia for a second, because if Terry McAuliffe does indeed win, Republicans will be shut out of all the top offices in Virginia. President Obama targeted it early. Is this state completely transformed?
Well, it's astounding. You're going to have the Democrats, if it goes the way we think, controlling both Senate seats, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general. We haven't seen that since Watergate. So this could be a moment in time, but what a wake-up call for the Republicans. They couldn't win anything in Virginia.
And I think that it is a telling thing about the Tea Party in that you have all this energy, but it's energy that seems to be hurting the Republicans in long term. You're going to have to do an autopsy on the autopsy. You remember the autopsy where the Republicans said, listen, we got to do better with women. We've got to do better with minorities. Cuccinelli points in the opposite direction. I think that, again, you have a Chris Christie, people are excited about him. I think he's a lot weaker than people think. And I don't think the Republicans have anybody else who's going to be able to win a national election.
It's a telling sign about the Virginia is a symbolic sign of the demography of the country, which hurts Republicans. We've had 8 or 9 states over the last 9 years that have moved from solidly Republican to lean Democratic. We've had 1 state that has moved from lean Democratic or solidly Democratic, West Virginia, to the Republican. So you have 8 one way, 1 the other. Demography in this country really is not a good sign for Republicans.
Candidates matter. I mean, the Republicans nominated far-right candidates.
Lesson for the Tea Party, Peggy Noonan?
Lesson for the Tea Party? Well, I'll tell you, I think something big may be coming. A lot of people may be cruising for a bruising here. Big difference between the Tea Party now and, say, 64 and Goldwater or 76 and Reagan. 64 and 76, Goldwater and Reagan both wanted to seize and control and win over the Republican Party. The Tea Party now shows signs of not wanting to win it, but of wanting to topple it over, wanting to do away with it. That is something new in our politics. It's going to get fought out over the next few years.
What should we be watching Tuesday night?
So these races aren't terribly competitive. The one contingency in Virginia, McAuliffe is a heavy favorite. You do have a Libertarian candidate, though, where his vote combined with Cuccinelli's would be ahead of McAuliffe. So if you see a lot of last-minute defectors, people saying, I don't like Cuccinelli, but I'm Republican, I'm going to vote, not waste my vote, then he might have an outside chance. But most of these races are kind of baked in, I think, at this point.
The one thing I'm looking for is New Jersey, the gender gap. In the last Quinnipiac poll, Christie had exactly the same level of support among women than he had among men. No gender gap whatsoever. He's running against a woman. If he comes anywhere near that close, that will be the central argument for Christie, that he is a Republican who can win.
I think the fact that de Blasio is going to win by such a big blowout.
New York mayor's race.
Yeah, New York mayor's race is very important. Why? Because the theme of income inequality. If this is the theme that I think that if the Democrats can nationalize, if you can say in 2014, look, the Republicans get power, they abuse it, and we've got income inequality, we want to do something about it, it's going to be a big, big year for Democrats.
I'm afraid that Peggy Noonan and Matt Tatt are going to have to tweet their win things. We're out of time. Thank you, everyone. Get ready for Nate's new website, 538.com. That's launching in the new year.